Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel and I'm an archaeologist. One of the first things that inspired me and many others like me towards this career as a child was the Indiana Jones films. Dr. Jones is undoubtedly one of, if not the most recognizable archaeologist in pop culture. And so, in the lead up to the release of the fifth film, I am digging deep into the real life archaeology featured in the previous installments. I've already covered the first three films. They are linked here if you haven't watched them already. Today, I am discussing the archaeological methods, sites, and artifacts portrayed in the fourth film, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Are crystal skulls real? Are they the remains of interdimensional aliens? Does Akator exist? I'll be answering these questions and more. Before we begin, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you can know right away when my next video, which will be a review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, comes out. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up to help promote it on the YouTube algorithm. I spend the equivalent of a workday writing, filming, and editing each of these videos. And I've even gone through the effort of dressing up as Marion Ravenwood sans bangs from the film. So you taking a few seconds to subscribe or like this video is a very much appreciated effort to help support me in continuing to make videos. Okay guys, let's dig in. I'm going to start out by saying that this is my least favorite Indiana Jones film for three main reasons. The first reason, which is probably why most archaeologists I know dislike it, is a plotline involving aliens, which feeds into the overall conspiracy narrative that aliens are responsible for the advancement of human civilization rather than human ingenuity and innovation. Ancient alien theories are the antithesis of archaeology, so combining them with the world's most popular archaeologist, who many of us idolized as children, really annoys us. The second thing I dislike about this film is the blending of several distinct Mesoamerican cultures into one and using them interchangeably. And by this I mean the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the Nazcans. This is different in comparison to the other films, which tend to focus on one particular civilization or culture, i.e. the Christians, the Hebrews, or the Hindu. Thirdly, this film made me physically ill with a virus. Back in May 2008, before I started studying archaeology at university, I went to go see Crystal Skull at a midnight screening. And during the scene where they make Indy have a staring contest with the skull, I vividly remember thinking, oh, I don't feel well. The morning after, I woke up with a high fever, sore throat, and cough. So ever since, I have maintained that this film was so bad, it made me sick. Or maybe it's the aliens that have cursed me. You pick. Beginning in 1957, in Nevada, Indy is brought to Area 51 by Russian agents to identify a mysterious box he was involved in examining earlier in the 40s. I think that most of us are aware that Area 51 is a real place, but the US Air Force says that it is an open training range and it is commonly thought to support the development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapon systems. The intense secrecy surrounding the base has made it the frequent subject of conspiracy theories and a central component of UFO folklore. The Roswell incident in July 1947 involved the recovery of metallic and rubber debris from a military balloon by Roswell Army Airfield personnel, who issued a press release claiming possession of a flying disc. I presume that this is the incident in the 40s Indy is referring to. In 1994, the US Air Force published a report concluding the crashed object was a top-secret nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul, involving microphones flown on high-altitude balloons for long-distance detection of sound waves generated by Soviet atomic bomb tests. One of the most memorable scenes from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is when Indiana Jones is trapped in a Doomtown nuclear test site. Indy quickly searches for refuge, finally jumping in a lead-lined refrigerator where he is remarkably saved from the intense radiation of the blast. I can't comment on the likelihood/probability of this working in real life. However, it is likely that the scene was meant to be part or portrayed as part of Operation Plum Bob nuclear tests. These occurred between May and October 1957 in New Mexico and Nevada, matching the location and timeline of the film. Ironically, a plumb bob is a key component of an archaeologist's toolkit. It is a pointed weight on a string used for finding a vertical reference line. In these opening scenes, we are also introduced to the film's antagonists of the Soviet Union, who are trying to cultivate mind control as a weapon. In February 1960, a story appeared in a French science magazine which claimed that both the US and the USSR were experimenting with telepathy. In 2022, 3 CIA reports from 1963 and 1964 were released that document conversations about the USSR's apparent use of extrasensory perception and attempted development of cybernetic telepathy. There are also references made to Indiana serving during World War II, which I think is a nod to the fact that archaeologists have long played a part in clandestine warfare. T.E. Lawrence, aka Lawrence of Arabia, is perhaps the most famous example of an archaeologist who was also a British intelligence officer during World War I. There are similar examples in World War II, such as when archaeologists worked with the Greek government in exile to set up spy networks in Turkey, Egypt, Cyprus, and Nazi-occupied Greece. American archaeologists took part in events such as burying Athenian dig records in an Egyptian tomb, activating prep school connections to establish spies, and organizing parachute drops into Greece. Also active during World War II was the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, aka the Monuments Men, which was established in 1943 to help protect cultural property in war areas during and after World War II. The group worked to safeguard historic and cultural monuments from war damage, and as the conflict came to a close, to find and return works of art and other items of cultural importance that had been stolen by the Nazis or hidden for safekeeping. Back to the film, we come once again to a familiar scene of Indy in a classroom teaching his students about Scarab Bray, a real archaeological site that is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is a stone-built Neolithic settlement located on mainland, the largest island in the Orkney archipelago of Scotland. It consists of 10 clustered houses made of flagstones in earthen dams. The houses included stone hearths, beds, and cupboards, and each had a primitive sewer system that used water to flush waste out into the ocean. The site was occupied from roughly 3180 BCE to about 2500 BCE, and it is Europe's most complete Neolithic village. It has been called the Scottish Pompeii because of its excellent preservation. After the climate became colder and wetter, the settlement seems to have been abandoned by its inhabitants. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't know how or why. Now we have the main artifact of the film introduced, the crystal skull. The elongated alien skull is entirely made up, but crystal skulls are an interesting historical hoax worth delving into. There are several famous examples of crystal skulls, two of which are mentioned in the film, the British Museum skull and the Mitchell-Hedges skull. Broadly speaking, it's been established that crystal skulls are human skull carvings made of clear or milky white quartz, also known as rock crystal, that were claimed to be pre-Columbian Mesoamerican artifacts by their alleged finders. However, these claims have been refuted for all specimens made available for scientific studies. Research carried out on several crystal skulls at the British Museum in 1967, 1996, and 2004 show that the indented lines marking the teeth were carved using rotary jeweler's tools from the 19th century. It was also determined that the type of crystal used is only found in Madagascar and Brazil, and thus unattainable or unknown within pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, which roughly comprises Central America and Mexico. The study concluded that the skulls were crafted in the 19th century in Germany, quite likely at workshops renowned at that time for crafting objects made from imported Brazilian quartz. It has also been established that the crystal skull in the British Museum was originally sold by a French antiquities dealer. The Mitchell-Hedges skull was allegedly discovered in 1924 by Anna Mitchell-Hedges, adopted daughter of British adventurer and author F.A. Mitchell-Hedges. She claimed that she found the skull buried under a collapsed altar inside a temple in Loubainton, Belize. However, her father made no mention of the alleged discovery in any of his writings, and others present at the time of the excavation recorded neither the skull's discovery or her presence at the dig. Recent evidence has come to light showing that F.A. Mitchell-Hedges purchased the skull at a Sotheby's auction in London in 1943. Anna died in April 2007 and left the skull to her husband. In November 2007, he took the skull to anthropologist Jane McLaren Walsh, who carried out detailed examination of it using ultraviolet light, a high-powered light microscope, and computerized tomography. In 2008, Walsh was able to take 2 sets of silicone molds of the surface tool marks for scanning electron microscope analysis, which revealed evidence that the crystal had been worked with a high-speed, hard metal rotary tool coated with a hard abrasive such as diamond. Walsh's extensive research on artifacts from Mexico and Central America showed that pre-contact artisans carved stone by abrading the surface with stone or wooden and later copper tools in combination with a variety of abrasive sands or pulverized stone. Walsh concluded that the skull was probably carved in the 1930s and was most likely based on the British Museum skull, which had been exhibited fairly continuously from 1898. So no aliens or psychic origins here, just some people trying to get their 15 minutes of fame and some quick cash off of some fakes. Back to the film, the search heads to the tomb of Francisco de Orellana, a Spanish explorer and conquistador, a real historical person. In one of the most improbably successful voyages in history, Orianna managed to sail the length of the Amazon River during an expedition looking for El Dorado. After reaching the river's mouth in 1542, he and his party sailed along the Atlantic coast until reaching Cubagua Island. He founded the city of Guayaquil in Ecuador and died during a second expedition in the Amazon, once again looking for the fabled Gold City. Orianna was accompanied on his first expedition by Gaspar de Carvajal, a Spanish Dominican missionary who chronicled the expedition as well as the sizes and dispositions of the indigenous peoples which occupied the banks of the river. For over 4 centuries, scholars dismissed its reports of large cities, well-developed roads, monumental construction, and fortified towns and dense populations as fabrications and propaganda. It was thought that the acidic soils of the Amazonia could not support the level of agriculture necessary to sustain such a civilization. However, recent research published in 2022 shows that his report could be correct. The publication presents LiDAR data of sites belonging to the Scarab culture in southwest Amazonia, including the presence of 2 remarkably large areas. These results indicate that the Scarab culture settlement pattern represents a type of tropical, low-density urbanism that refutes arguments that the area was sparsely populated in pre-Hispanic times. As Indy takes an interesting ride through the school library, we have another name drop of a famous real-life archaeologist, Australian Veer, who specialized in the study of European prehistory. He spent most of his life in the UK, working for the University of Edinburgh and then for the Institute of Archaeology in London. He wrote over 240 articles and 26 books during his career, making him someone who probably did spend most of his time in the library rather than exclusively doing fieldwork. I must also mention here a story that I heard from a biblical Hebrew professor when I first started university. He had been on a research trip to Yale while they were filming the university scenes there, and he was offered a chance to watch or be an extra during filming. I can't remember which one was which, but ultimately he said no. What? Why would you do that? That still boggles me to this day. I would jump at the chance to be included in these films. Speaking of ancient languages, this film adds 3 more to Indy's lexicon, which already includes Hebrew, Hindu, Latin, and Greek, but not Jovitos. The languages mentioned here are Quechua, Mayan, and Guayoma, all of which are real. Quechua was the main language family of the Inca Empire, and its variants are still widely spoken today. It's the second most spoken language family in Peru. Mayan is still spoken by over 6 million people, primarily in Central America. Indy is correct that Guayoma is an extinct language once spoken in the regions of northeastern Peru/southern Colombia. However, it was not related to Mayan in any way, and it is not likely to have had a pre-Columbian written form. While we're talking about languages, I want to also mention this linguistic buzzword that Indy keeps mentioning, ideograms. Ideograms are graphic symbols that represent an idea or concept, independent of any particular language. An example of an ideogram that we use today are numerals, mathematical symbols, the ampersand, or even the dollar sign. What Indy is referring to here is not an ideogram, but a logogram, a written character that represents a word or meaning. There is not always a single way to read them, and they are in some cases read as a complex phrase rather than a single word. The Mayan script used logograms complemented with a set of syllabic glyphs. As we head to Peru, the film also uses the famous Nazca Lines to help further the plot. In this case, pointing the way to Oriana's tomb. In reality, they are a group of geoglyphs in southern Peru. They were created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by people making depressions or shallow incisions in the desert floor. The first published mention of the Nazca Lines was in a book from 1553, where they were described as trail markers. Archaeologists, historians, and mathematicians have all tried to determine their purpose. Figuring out how they were made has been easier than why. In 1983, it was proved that they could have been made by the Nazcans when Joe Nickel reproduced the designs using the same tools and technology that would have been available to the Nazca. He proved that a small team of people could recreate even the largest figures within days without any aerial assistance. Archaeological surveys have also found wooden stakes in the ground at the end of some of the lines, which supports this theory. One such stake was carbon dated and is the basis for establishing the age of the lines. This proves that the 1969 hypothesis of Erich von Däniken, who suggested that ancient astronauts had constructed these works, is wrong. The film does get right that the most well-known hypothesis for why the lines were made is that so they could be seen by deities in the sky. Oriana's tomb complex has several things I want to mention. First, what Indy says about scorpions, the bigger they are, the better it is for when you get stung, is 100% true. When I was going on my digs in Jordan, we always got briefed that the smaller and better camouflaged scorpions are the ones that you are more likely to die from getting stung by. Luckily, this never happened. I actually never saw one scorpion in the 3 summers that I was there. The sequence then introduces the idea of people shaping their heads to imitate the aliens. Artificial cranial deformation is a practice that predates written history and has been found in a number of cultures that are widely separated geographically and chronologically. It still occurs today in a few areas. In the Americas, the Maya and the Inca, amongst others, performed it. According to one theory, it was likely performed to signify group affiliation or to demonstrate social status. Such motivations may have played a key role in Maya society, aimed at creating a skull shape that is aesthetically more pleasing or associated with desirable cultural attributes, similar to the practice of foot binding in China. The scene is set in Chauchilla Cemetery, a real place that contains pre-Hispanic mummified human remains and archaeological artifacts, located to the south of the city of Nazca in Peru. It's never named in the film, but was mentioned in the screenplay, promotional materials, and merchandise. The fictionalized version includes a number of embellishments, including mask-wearing Nazcan guards and a hidden underground burial chamber. It is shown as being built on a promontory overlooking the Nazca Valley, offering a view of the Nazca Lines. This is entirely incorrect. The actual site is located on a flat plain in the desert with no big above-ground architecture. It was discovered in the 1920s and had been used from 200 to 900 CE, well before Orianna arrived in the 16th century, around 600 years later. It is important as an archaeological source of Nazca culture. However, it has been extensively plundered by grave robbers. The bodies found here are remarkably well preserved due to the dry climate and the funeral rites, where the bodies were clothed in embroidered cotton and then painted with a resin that is thought to have kept out insects and slowed decay. The human remains seen in Oriana's tomb do not match the real ones found in Chauchilla, but instead closely resemble Aztec techniques, where remains of the deceased were placed in a woven bag or wrap, often adorned with a ceremonial mask, and were typically placed in seated positions, sometimes secured by ropes. Our last archaeological topic to cover today is the main destination of the film, the city of Akator, which is also referenced as El Dorado. Myths of ancient utopian cities filled with gold are a key theme that drove exploration of the Americas by the Europeans. This all may sound familiar to you, as The Last Crusade also has a connection to Cibola, one of the mythical 7 cities of gold sought by explorer Francisco de Coronado. None of these mythical places have ever been found, and they seem to have originated from either a misinterpretation of local customs, or they come from stories made up to extract money from explorers/tourists. In the case of Akator, the name has been slightly changed from the original of Akakor, a mythological underground city inhabited by the equally fictional Uga, or Uega, not sure how to say that. It is allegedly located somewhere between Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru. It was first described in 1976 by a German journalist based on interviews with a self-proclaimed Brazilian Indian chieftain named Tutankanara. Working as a jungle guide, Tutankanara led tourists and adventurers looking for pyramids and the underground city. But questions were raised after several of his clients went missing in mysterious circumstances. In 1990, another German adventurer and a film producer tricked Tutanka into taking them on an expedition, during which his story began to unravel. Germany's Federal Criminal Police Office have confirmed that Tutankanara was born Gunther Hawk in Bavaria and disappeared in the early 1960s due to financial difficulties. Nara denies that he is Hawk. In terms of how much archaeological methods are used in this film, all I would really count here, besides the teaching, is the interpretation of the message from Oxley. Indy calling the aliens archaeologists because they collect ancient artifacts is eyebrow-raising to say the least, but I suppose it is technically correct, as archaeologists do collect things that eventually end up in museums. There are no digs or archaeological tools used in this film. In fact, the opening scene shows the Russians crushing artifacts from Indy's dig site down in Mexico. I will concede to liking one of the last lines in the movie where Indy says that the treasure of Akator was not gold, but knowledge, which is something that definitely applies to archaeologists. To us, knowledge of the past is the true treasure, not shiny gold things. Okay, everyone, that's it for today. What do you think of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Do you despise it as much as the archaeological community? Let me know in the comments down below. If you made it all the way to the end and you liked this video, please take a moment to let the algorithm know. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is being released this week, so subscribe and hit the bell so you can watch right away when I release my review of it. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!